What would have happened if the Saints drafted Patrick Mahomes way back in 2017? Interesting question posed by the boys here, Mike Triplett, Nick Underhill at New Orleans Football. This video came across my desk. I haven't watched it, but I am very intrigued by this conversation. Now, a little bit of context before we get into it. 2017 draft, the Saints took Marshon Lattimore, number 11. Number 10 was Patrick Mahomes. Now, Sean Payton has been on record saying that Patrick Mahomes was his favorite quarterback prospect coming out of college in his entire tenure. Two quarterbacks that we were very tied heavily to were Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. This is a crazy situation, though, because more context, this was after the third consecutive 7-win season from the Saints, which is kind of hard to imagine now, talking about how good Drew Brees was, how good Sean Payton was. But this is 3 in a row now, 7-win season. So it hasn't been pretty in New Orleans, right? Brees, though, has a lot of legs left. I mean, Brees is about to go on probably 2 of the best seasons of his career. I think he finishes number 2 in the MVP voting in 2018. Obviously, the Saints are in NFC Championship games. They're a deep playoff run team. So the next 2 seasons are pretty good for Brees. I think we go like 11 wins and then 13 wins, and then it kind of falls off a little bit. On the flip side, Patrick Mahomes started in 1 game in 2017. For the Chiefs, and then it was history from there. He became the starter and never looked back. So he plays not immediately, but he plays in that season. So let's go ahead and listen to what they're having to say, and then of course I will sprinkle my brilliance on top.
I mean, there's always going to be the what if with Patrick Mahomes. The what if. I mean, this guy, I think, like, I'm ready to put him in like my top 3 right now already. Like, I think he's there. I'd rank him ahead of Aaron Rodgers. Like,
yeah,
my lifetime,
for sure.
It's Brady, Manning, and Mahomes. Like,
I think, yeah. I mean, the Patrick Mahomes thing I've said on here, but yeah, Patrick Mahomes has probably already done enough to be in that conversation of like a top 5, top 6 quarterback of all time. Because as time goes forward, it's just so obvious how much better he is than other players. You know, people like Joe Montana, people like Y.A. Tittle and Johnny Unitas and Troy Aikman, and people that at one point were in the top 10 of quarterbacks of all time. Now it's like, guys, I mean, we can't have Joe Montana in the top 2 anymore. We can't have players like that, you know, Terry Bradshaw. Like, just because they won Super Bowls, you know, it's obvious. You can do it generationally. That's kind of how I look at it. I don't like to look at a top 10 list with players from the 20s because it's not fair to them too. You can't be like, well, you know, they wouldn't have done anything in this day and age. It's like, yeah, but they were also playing. They were playing in like deck shoes. They weren't even playing on cleats. You know, like the ball was some waterlogged old ball they had in the back of a truck. You know, like they weren't working out. They didn't have nutritionists. They didn't have yoga. They didn't have, you know, like it's a totally different world. So on both ends, it's hard to measure those guys. But I think Mahomes is probably a top. I think he's right there. I think it's him. Right now, the conversation is like Peyton Manning or Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is about to jump Manning. He's already jumped Rodgers and players like that.
As far as the guys that I've been able to watch, I was probably a little too young to like fully appreciate Joe Montana, but like I respect that he's up there. Mike Sky Otto Graham like is probably in there somewhere, but
my guy's right here. I could have worn my
Randall?
touchdown QB Eagles Tecmo Bowl shirt today. That's my guy, not Otto Graham.
But yeah, you know, but my top 3, like my lifetime, are definitely those guys right now. But obviously, we've heard Sean Payton talk about how close they were forever. I've talked to people that were part of that process, and like Sean actually did like this guy.
Yeah, I mean, I said that 20 seconds ago. No surprise, but this one was there. You know, Mahomes and Lamar Jackson were 2 guys who, coming into draft day, I thought the Saints were going to make a move for. And me being a bit contrarian, or not even contrarian, but y'all know how I look at like windows of winning, but I didn't want them to draft the next quarterback. I thought we were fine with Brees. I thought it would be kind of a wasted pick. Like, let's say you do draft Patrick Mahomes, and we'll kind of get into this in the video, but what's he going to do? Sit for 3 years? Are you going to move off of Brees? At this point, Brees was really good. At this point, there was no moving off Brees. You know, there wasn't any shine off of Drew Brees. So there was no reason to think like, yeah, draft a first-round quarterback and then get rid of Drew Brees. Why would you do that? Why would you take that risk? So for me, it was more of like, it just isn't the right time. It's not the right time. Of course, you would want Patrick Mahomes, but at the time, it wouldn't have made any sense for Mahomes to get playing time.
Draft, like all this stuff is real. Like
everybody says they were gonna draft Pat Mahomes. The Saints really were gonna draft Pat Mahomes.
Yeah,
Like,
agree.
Only thing that stopped them from drafting Pat Mahomes was Marshon Lattimore slipping. Like those two guys, I think were both ranked in their top 4. And they would, if either guy went at like 6, they would have traded up to 7 for the other guy. Yeah. Like the only reason they stayed at 11 was because they would have been happy with Lattimore and Mahomes. Now they might have ultimately taken Lattimore over Mahomes, but they went into that day thinking, right. But well, I mean, like we've talked to everybody about it, and they don't ever know for sure because they never actually got to make the choice. Lattimore was higher on their board, but regardless, they went into that day thinking they were taking.
I kind of agree with Mike here. Like, and I don't have anywhere near the sources or context that they do with talking to people that were kind of in the war room. But if they both would have been there, I think they take Lattimore, because I'm under the assumption that they're thinking the same way I am. Like, look, we have this Hall of Fame level quarterback. If we can get who we believe is a top 4 player in the draft and Marshon Lattimore at a position we actually do need that can impact us on day one, let's do that. It's such a weird predicament to be in because, and let me give y'all what I'm looking at before we get deeper in the video. So this is Breeze's year by year stats. Okay, so where the yellow line is 2017. So this would be the season that Patrick Mahomes' first season. Breeze goes 4,300 yards, 23 touchdowns, 8 picks. Okay, makes the Pro Bowl. We win 11 games. The next year, and we win 2 playoff games. The next year, we go 13-2. Breeze throws for almost 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He gets second in the MVP, second in the Offensive Player of the Year. Like, this year is nuts, right? This year from Drew Brees is bananas. So 2 years into what would be Mahomes' career, Breeze is playing at an insanely high level. And this, of course, is the NFC Championship game. So if you're staring at this, right? If you're staring at this, you're thinking, well, Patrick Mahomes ain't playing in 2019. His 3rd year. He's at the end of his rookie deal. Why would he play? Why would he play after Breeze just led the Saints to an NFC title game, had 32 touchdowns and 5 interceptions? So then in 2019, Breeze, he's injured. All right, so this is where Breeze starts to kind of fall apart physically. He gets injured. He's out for, this is the Teddy Bridgewater where Teddy played. But Breeze goes 8-3. Breeze throws for almost 3,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. He's still playing at an insanely high level through 11 games. I mean, if you tack on another 5 games to it, if it's a normal season, Breeze is probably pretty close to being in that like mid 30 touchdowns, single digit interceptions, 4,000, 4,500 yards, somewhere in there. These numbers are bananas. And then the final year of his career, Breeze goes 9-3. We all know the end there. But even then, in 12 games, he had 3,000 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. So when in here do y'all think Patrick Mahomes would have played? To me, the earliest he would have played is 2019. He would have played instead of Bridgewater, right? So, and this is the year they lose to the Buccaneers at home in the playoffs. So Mahomes would sit 2017, sit 2018, and then play the back half of 2019. Would he be the same player? I don't know. Who knows? It's kind of crazy to think about a top 10 pick sitting for that long in the NFL nowadays. Like, it just doesn't happen, In the NFL nowadays, it's like half a season. You draft a quarterback, you give the current starter half a season, and then you make the switch. 2.5 seasons is unheard of. So that's the part where I'm like, I don't know what would have happened. Now, if all things were equal, that would be perfect, right? Because then you get the best of Drew Brees, and then the absolute moment that he's ready to get out of there, you replace him with Patrick Mahomes. So that would have been like, yeah, that probably would have been best case scenario. The other caveat is that if you do replace Breeze with Mahomes in that year, he probably doesn't come back the following year. Because he was supposed to retire anyways. We've all heard the stories that Breeze was supposed to retire and go to NBC, and the Saints were supposed to get Tom Brady that final year of Breeze's career. Breeze ends up coming back. Brady ends up going to Tampa. The rest is history. So with Mahomes already taking his job, I highly doubt Breeze would have came back for that final year. So that would have also really been a butterfly effect, because then you get one less year of Breeze, one extra year of Mahomes. I don't want to say we probably, but we more than likely win that playoff game against Tampa. A lot would have changed in that pocket of time if we get there, if Mahomes does sit for 2.5 years and all that stuff.
Taking Mahomes, assuming that they thought Lattimore would go in the top 5 and they would be taking Mahomes at 11 or moving up a couple spots to take Mahomes. So this is a bona fide what if.
So how much different is it if they get him? Like, just
that's a good point by Mike. This is a legitimate what if scenario. It's not like the Patriots saying like, what would have happened if we would have got Patrick Mahomes, or this is a legitimate coin toss situation. This was on the razor's edge of happening. It was a perfect storm of things all around it that didn't allow it to happen, but it easily could have happened.
Top of the pyramid.
They win. They go to these 3 Super Bowls and win them. Nobody disagrees with the fact that the Saints roster at every other position besides quarterback has been as good as any other roster in the NFL since 2017. For a while, it was the best roster at positions 2 through 53 in the NFL.
100%.
And the last couple of years, it's been a good enough roster that I think they are the ones who go to at least 3 Super Bowls and win at least 2 Super Bowls if Pat.
So, and Mike, I'm sure will answer this, but let's go back at those stats. So if he gets drafted in 2017, where the yellow marker is, he's not playing there, and he's not playing in 18. So those 2 seasons, I don't think really get changed. Now 19, they probably go to the Super Bowl. I would think they're probably right there. Let's look at what the New Orleans Saints did in 2019, 2020. All right, so this is 2019. This is the first season, theoretically, that Mahomes would have played. So Mahomes would have played right here. Breeze gets hurt. Mahomes comes in week 2. So he plays 2 through 7. And then you have but then, that's the question, okay? So really think about, and in the comments below, answer this. If Mahomes plays starting week 2 in 2019, so he would have been drafted in 2017, not played in 18, so that's 2 seasons. Then he would have came in week 2 of his 3rd season. So Mahomes plays here, and here. Week 8, Breeze can come back. So in the comments below, let me know what you think. But would Breeze have come back in week 8? I think he would have. Because he's coming off of one of the best seasons of his career. There's no way you just flat out make this switch and Breeze never comes back to the field. So, which leads into the playoffs, right? Which would have led into the rest of the season and then led into the playoffs, and we have a heartbreaking loss at home in overtime. I was at that game. It was absolutely miserable. This was brutal to watch. So, this is the big question mark right here. What would have happened in week 8 of 2019? And then 2020, so the following season, this is where Breeze starts to fall apart. This is where he's hurt. We get Taysom Hill for 4 games here. Breeze was not the same this year. Physically, you could tell. This is where we lose to Tampa at home in the divisional. Like I said, this is the Tom Brady year. This year, I think, is the one that really gets changed. Because I think once Breeze gets hurt here, he doesn't come back. Because he was playing through a ton of injuries in week 15, 16, 17 in the playoffs. He said he had 6 broken ribs. So if he's that hurt, and Mahomes is playing instead of Taysom Hill, I don't think Breeze comes back. I think Breeze came back because he was the best option to play quarterback for the Saints. So this is the season where I think the Saints probably win the Super Bowl because they're going to beat Tampa at home. This is the year, where obviously on the flip side, Kansas City is not who they are because Patrick Mahomes not there. So this year right here, 2020, we're definitely an NFC Championship, possible Super Bowl situation. And then there's no reason to believe that we don't just kind of continue that because Patrick Mahomes is our starting quarterback. So then the rest is history. So 2020 to me is the big changer.
Mahomes is our quarterback. I have no problem believing that.
So, all right, let's start at the top. Like, Sean Payton obviously is still the coach. Pat Mahomes.
He's already in the Hall of Fame. They waived the 5-year rule because they think he's a QB whisperer because nobody's going to be like, oh, well, Mahomes was a sure thing. They're going to be like, look at the development Sean Payton did with this guy.
This would have done
people would have
wonders
never
for Sean
realized
Payton.
that he was going to succeed no matter what.
Right. So Sean's still the coach. When does Drew leave? When do they push him out?
Okay, now
of here?
here's the real what if that.
Now this right here, ladies and gentlemen, let's see how right I am on my timeline. This is exactly what we're talking about. Good job, Nicholas, asking the question. When does Breeze leave? I think he leaves that mid-2020. When he gets hurt, Taysom comes in. The year they lose to the Buccaneers, he leaves. He's done because he's not gonna not come back after a great year the year before. So I'm with them. Or let's say
so that 2017 Saints team started off horrible on defense. They gave up over 1,000 yards in the first 2 weeks. They were 0-2, got creamed by
the Patriots. The Patriots, because I remember at that game, saying, blow it up. At that game, and then the Saints went on to have like the 2 best years in their history. So I know exactly what he's talking about.
Minnesota got creamed by New England and gave up over 500 or like
I'm
over
the
1,000
best.
yards in 2 games. Now they had also missed the playoff, or they had gone 7-9 3 straight years. Marshon Lattimore was a huge reason why they turned things around and finally fixed that defense. There's a scenario where all they have to do, if Marshon Lattimore made a 2-game difference, they missed the playoffs for the 4th straight year. I think Breeze is gone.
Breeze is. I think he's gone too.
I think they don't re-sign Drew Brees.
That part's interesting. So he is saying that Lattimore is the reason that they made the playoffs, and that was the Minnesota Miracle situation. So Mike is saying that without Lattimore, they missed the playoffs again. And if it's 4 straight years of no playoffs, Breeze is gone anyways, which is interesting, which I did not factor in, which takes away those MVP years or MVP level years of Drew Brees.
And Mahomes takes over as a starter in 2018. And so that's a big, if they had gone, we used to talk about this. I remember this used to be one of our sideline conversations. Would it have been worth it to miss on Mahomes if they would have just won one more with Breeze in 2018? No, I mean, obviously it wouldn't have. It would have been much better to have Mahomes or whatever, but that would have been a nice bow on the Breeze Peyton or whatever.
For sure.
At least you would have had that and not going to that. It's another reason why not going to the 2018 Super Bowl really, really, really hurts.
I think there's 2 things that happen that make them really bad that season, or at least worsen where they're at and up the odds of them missing the playoffs. Because I think they were desperate for a cornerback. Like they had to get a cornerback at some point in that draft. So if you don't get Lattimore, you probably draft Kevin King at the end of the first round. Kevin King sucks. Like he's out of the league. He's no longer a football player. That was a bust of a pick. His last season, I think, was in 21. Like he just wasn't good.
You can't give him Tre'Davious White. They could have moved up.
No, I don't think. I mean, they might have. But let's
sure.
Existing in the reality of the situation. And then also Streif gets hurt and Ramczyk fills in for him. You don't have Ramczyk. Ramczyk was a big piece of that season. I think their situation at tackle becomes a borderline.
So let's just say
then.
they missed the playoffs.
They missed the playoffs.
Yeah,
they missed the playoffs.
And they
Breeze
didn't
is probably
hit
gone
on Ramczyk, which is a huge piece.
But if you do that butterfly effect domino kind of situation, like I'm basically saying that the team is awesome, and Mike said that too. The rosters were as good of roster as anybody in the NFL. And if you just swap Breeze and Mahomes, it's dope AF. But now they're talking about like you don't have Ramczyk, you don't have Lattimore, Breeze is gone, The city's pissed. You're talking about 4 years of no playoffs. Mahomes comes in. The team just isn't that good, or isn't anywhere near as good. The Saints, that was another, we talked about that in the Rams video. The Saints defense was insane that year, the 2018 year where they go to the NFC Championship game. They were like the third best defense in the NFL. So if they aren't, which Mike and them are saying that without Lattimore they would not have been, then the roster just isn't as good. So is the difference between Mahomes and Breeze in 2018 that big of a difference? I don't think so, because Breeze was amazing in 2018. Breeze was incredible. I mean, it's hard to be any better than Drew Brees was. He had, 5 interceptions and 35 touchdowns? Hard to be better, right? So maybe this is a situation, ladies and gentlemen, where we're trying to have our cake and eat it too. We're trying to say, no, our defense would have been badass in 2018. But then it's like, well, would it have been? Because you wouldn't have Marshon Lattimore. That maybe it wouldn't have been that good. Maybe the team as a overall, this is crazy to say, but maybe the team in 2018 was better the way it was than it would have been if you added Patrick Mahomes but took away Marshon Lattimore. Now, obviously, long term, the team is better with Patrick Mahomes. But in that very small bubble of 2018, the Super Bowl what-if season, the season the Saints should have won the Super Bowl, what if they're just not that good because Mahomes is so young and the defense isn't anywhere near as good?
Because as we know, not only do you rarely get a first-team All-Pro at 32, you can go ahead and say, okay, well then next year let's draft the right tackle. You can miss on a lot of offensive linemen in the first round too. We've seen the Saints do it. So yeah, at the very least, now if you're really trying to sell yourself into this being okay, you've lost out on Lattimore and Ramczyk now.
I think
okay.
Yeah. See, now we're getting into the reality of the situation, ladies and gentlemen. You add Mahomes, you lose Breeze, but you also drop Lattimore, you drop Ramczyk. This team's getting way worse.
I think you miss out on another guy too. Like Sean finds Taysom Hill at the end of that season doing his little scouting report of Max McCaffrey. If you got, now Breeze might have been gone, but maybe not. Like maybe you're looking at your QB depth chart. You aren't maybe looking for that Breeze successor because you have Pat Mahomes, so maybe you're passing on them. But you got, there's 2 QBs I think that get affected by this. But you got Chase Daniel, Breeze, and Mahomes on your roster, so there's probably no room for Taysom Hill. And then also,
yeah, but
that might end his career because his longevity in the league is because they figured out he worked on special teams, which I think bought him time to develop as a quarterback.
Well, Taysom, yeah, I mean, I agree with Nick. Like, there's no reason to have Taysom. There's certainly no reason to have Taysom playing like quarterback and doing all this crazy stuff that he's doing if you have Breeze and Mahomes. Like, Peyton doesn't have to develop Taysom the way that Taysom develops. So yeah, he probably never has that career. Yeah, no doubt. Let me just say this too, sidebar. I think they updated their cameras or added cameras to their videos. New Orleans football, if you're listening, which I know y'all are, great job. These look great. The production's gone up tremendously in the last 2 weeks. So well done to whoever is doing the camera and the editing here at the back end of these videos.
Quarterback, then he kind of gets this chance to become this all-purpose player because of it. But if Sean Payton never sees him, the Packers are probably only looking at him as a QB. They're showcasing him in the preseason. He's probably not good enough. If he gets another shot somewhere else, it's probably QB only. That first training camp, he passed 30% in practice. Like, I don't think that he's in the NFL. There's a solid chance he's not in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
If they don't,
I think they still.
If they don't miss on Mahomes,
they still sign him, right?
Maybe
I don't
not.
remember. It was Chase Daniel that year in 17.
Yeah, they had Chase Daniel, Breeze, and then it would have been Mahomes.
Another thing that changes is Michael Thomas, because I'm not sure if Mahomes' passing tree would have been the same as Breeze's that allowed Thomas to do what he did. So you could probably take an eraser to the record books of that season for Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
All right.
They might have signed him, but I don't know, man. Like, he signed him with this idea of I'm going to develop this guy into a
because it wasn't just putting him on the practice squad. They put him on the active roster.
Yeah.
You don't do that for a 4th QB.
There's
his career is totally different.
Right, so we're now trading Lattimore, Ramczyk, and Taysom Hill for Mahomes, which is we're still doing it.
And one more guy. One more guy. They trade for Teddy Bridgewater.
What year did they trade for Bridgewater?
That was
that doesn't really matter as far as the impact on the Saints. It changes his career, but it doesn't really impact the Saints as far as what we're talking about.
Was that 18 or 17? 17 or 18?
Not 17.
It was 18 then. So they trade for Teddy. They get Teddy on the team. Breeze gets hurt the next year. They talk him into sticking around and everything. He has the 5 wins. Like, his career is probably a little bit different. He's still in the league,
Yeah.
obviously. He still gets his
Doesn't
chances,
matter,
but
but yeah.
I don't know if he gets the same contract after that. I think that
Probably
5-game
not.
audition like changed his career a little bit and got him a little bit more money.
It did.
He's ultimately in the place where he would have been anyhow, probably is a top tier backup, but he got there a little bit later and got a little bit more money because they didn't draft Pat Mahomes. Like, he wouldn't have ended up here.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter.
I like it all. I mean, this is just therapy for all the Saints fans who are like,
all right, let's keep going. So 18, they make
still not. It still hurts. It still hurts.
So 18, you go in the draft. They need a cornerback still. They still need a
'Cause they
pass.
missed.
They still need a pass rusher.
Now, this is dangerous. I will say this. This is very dangerous to do when you start saying, like, okay, we have Mahomes now, but now we got to replace Lattimore, because then you have the hindsight 2020. Because now you can say, like, oh, well, they could have picked this all-pro guy at this pick. Holy shit, now we have Mahomes and blank cornerback. And then the next year we could have took this all-pro pass rusher because he's slid. But at the time, it's like, you have no way of knowing that. Like Mike said, you could draft a bust cornerback. You could draft a bust cornerback the next year. You could draft a bust offensive lineman. Like, it could have never came to fruition. It's easy to do the what if with Mahomes because it's a straight up 1-for-1. You knew if it wasn't Mahomes, it was Lattimore. If it wasn't Lattimore, it was Mahomes. But now that we're doing this is where I start to have trouble with the whole, like, butterfly effect.
Oh gosh, you are really sweetening the pot. You're not now. All of a sudden, we're not trading for Marcus Davenport.
You're not trading for
you
Marcus
are really
Davenport.
catering to
And they're still
the
cornerback
fan base
desperate.
here.
They're still cornerback desperate.
Yeah, see, Mike's saying what I'm saying. It's like now you're just kind of like cherry picking players.
Because the year after, still with Lattimore, they were cornerback desperate, and they didn't answer that position until they got Jackrabbit. You know, they were up in the air. So they're still cornerback desperate. We know Kevin King isn't great. That was kind of apparent early on.
All right.
You know, and
You're losing. No, you're losing me. I still say they were defensive end desperate. They were defensive.
There's
end
two things
desperate.
I think happen. I think you draft your cornerback. I think they draft Alexander. I think they probably draft Alexander because you're picking earlier too. You don't have to move up to get him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like now you're talking about taking like a top 5 cornerback in the NFL. You know, now I mean, yeah, Nick is really sweetening the whole, like, look how awesome we'd be with Mahomes thing.
And I think they
yeah, because you just missed the playoffs and you just let Drew Brees go.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily in all-in mode like
you're
they
not
were.
all in. So I think you draft him,
Jair Alexander,
and I think they make that trade for Clowney. And I think Clowney.
So now we have Jadeveon Clowney, Jair Alexander, Patrick Mahomes. We're slowly getting into a Madden fantasy draft mode here.
It kind of becomes the stopgap. It opens up then. I think Trey Hendrickson gets more opportunities. I think he ultimately ends up being the guy that sticks on the team long term.
Wow.
I think that's kind of how it plays out.
So we've lost Lattimore, Ramczyk, and Taysom Hill.
And Davenport.
But we've got
Davenport, Bridgewater, Cam Jordan probably is out if Hendrickson and Clowney or your defensive ends.
Jair Alexander.
You added Jair, Patrick Mahomes, Jadeveon Clowney, Trey Hendrickson. Like, this team all of a sudden is the 85 Bears.
Clowney. And, so you swung it back around.
Yeah.
You know, for a minute there, you were making it okay that they missed out on Mahomes, and now you've made reality even better. Yeah.
Look, it can get worse. So they're a good team in 18. They're a good team in 18. So they're picking towards the end of the first round.
Sure.
Maybe 32nd, maybe 31st, maybe 30th. They probably need a wide receiver.
In 19 now? The 19
The
draft?
19 because you have your 19 first round pick because you didn't trade it for Davenport.
Yeah. Who are we getting at the Hold on.
Look.
Hold on. What receiver are we drafting
Well,
at
you're
the
hoping
end
it's not,
of the 2019?
You're hoping it's not
first
N'Keal
round?
Harry.
But you notice, ladies and gentlemen, how there's always, like, as long as it wasn't this guy, like, when he's doing these, like, fantasy picks, it's like, and then the people he names, like Kevin King, N'Keal Harry, it's like, man, if those players are in place of Jair Alexander and whoever he's about to name, like, then it's a total nightmare situation. That's how fickle the NFL draft is.
I can't remember because the Saints weren't in the mix that year, so I don't remember researching.
Debo and AJ Brown are in range.
Oh, see now, yeah, I mean, this is getting out of control now.
They're in range.
It
You got a
would
top
be,
tier you got a top tier quarterback. You're getting
It
them
would have been
weapons.
DK Metcalf. It would have been Peyton taking his shirt off with DK Metcalf at the combine during the interview, and that's who they would have gone with.
I mean, there's a lot of things that could have happened, though. There's a lot of things that could have happened that would have just completely changed the shit. Look, it's easy to kind of slot these things in, but like they do kind of make logical sense.
You know what though? All that stuff makes logical sense, but I don't care. You can tell me any 10 names, replace any 10 names, and I still say they're going to 3 Super Bowls with Mahomes at
That's
quarterback.
it. That's all you need. That's all you need. Yeah.
And obviously they still have Cam Jordan. They still have Teron Armstead. They still have
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, man. I really kind of struggle with this because I'm not sure if I agree with the biggest domino that changes my projection and Mike's projection. Nick is in a fantasy island over there with his roster, but the domino that changes it is, would the 2017 team would have been 2 to 3 wins worse without Lattimore? That's the big one. That's the big difference to me, because that then allows for the Breeze to walk. But if in my timeline, Breeze is still there in 18 and 19. So if Breeze is still there in 18, he's playing. And if he plays at that level, he's playing in 19. And then it kind of changes everything, because Mike's talking about 3 Super Bowls. To me, you really could only start counting like Super Bowls and all that stuff in that like 2019, 2020 range. So I probably tack on. So I guess in my final answer is that 2018 stays the same. 2019, you may get a trip. And then we are a dominant team. Like Patrick Mahomes in the division now, like you're just dominating. The NFC South's terrible, you know? So if Mahomes is there, like the Saints are just a perennial juggernaut in the NFC South. And this is also assuming that Sean Payton could do what Andy Reid did, which I don't have a problem believing that Payton could have got the most out of Mahomes. But I mean, it is an interesting question. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments below what you think. What would have happened with Patrick Mahomes? Here's the big thing I want to know. Do you think that Breeze would have been gone after 2017? Do you think that's the big sticking point? Let me know in the comments below what you think. Would Drew Brees have been gone after the 2017 season if the Saints drafted Patrick Mahomes? Or do you think things would have taken a little bit longer to develop and before we saw Mahomes really kind of become the starter in New Orleans? So let me know. Thank you very much for watching. Great video, guys. This is a fantastic video. Really enjoyed it. You know, you can always tell if I go more than 20-30 seconds without pausing and talking, that means I'm really enjoying the video. So great job here. You know, I'll just kind of wax poetic a little bit. I'm not going to react to videos talking about the salary cap, talking about assistant coach, like tight end coach hires and stuff like that. When I see channels doing that, like locally in the New Orleans media, that's tough. You know, I would advise those channels to not do that. Like, I don't think y'all want to know about the second wide receiver assistant coach, or the quarterback coach, or the salary cap situations. Like, that's not the content that I'm looking for. So these are the kind of videos that I think is great in the off season. Obviously, we'll do a ton of draft stuff, a ton of prospect stuff. But if y'all are expecting me to talk about the salary cap or the luxury tax or the tight end coaches, that's not for us. So thank you, New Orleans football. I'll put all their stuff in the description below. Great video, and I will see all you guys later at the next video. It's carnival season right here in New Orleans. That's why I'm wearing this wristband. You have to have wristbands just to even walk around my complex, because it's so crazy down here in the French Quarter. So if you are in New Orleans, have a great carnival season, a great Mardi Gras weekend. Have fun, be safe, all that fun stuff. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, ladies and gentlemen.